Most people will not and do not wish to argue with providing aid or sanctuary to innocent people beset by civil war. The murderous dictator on one hand, Bashar Assad, and murderous terrorists on the other, ISIS. Syria is a piteous calamity. Over 12 million displaced, some say 200,000 dead. A storm of suffering, anxiety, lack of shelter, fear and despair brought on by a conflict that has no rules. Assad gasses, drops barrel bombs, turns his air force on his own citizens. ISIS, the fanatic Islamist sect, has no boundaries to its indecencies. Cruelty is their daily bread. In the midst of this, during our own tranquil election campaign, all three parties made some pledge to assist the innocent and helpless. The most generous came from the Liberals, generous on the number of refugees and particularly generous on how quickly they promised to bring them here. The number was 25,000, the pledge to bring all those to our country by December 31st. On number, there might be something of a debate, but their main opposition to Conservatives pledged 20,000, so that's not significant. And the pledges, as all know, were before the nearly 200 dead in Paris and the 300 wounded. In the aftermath of the attacks in Paris and in the light of what we've heard of ISIS' declared intent to use the refugees as a cover for infiltration into the countries of the West, there is a reasonable and prudent call to hold back on or modify the speed with which this resettlement is to take place. Brad Wall, the Premier of Saskatchewan, has reasonably, in my view, made such a request. The polling of Canadians reveals Premier Wall is very close to the majority sentiment. So the question becomes, what is the argument against using a little more time, a little more caution, to gain the oversight and the protection to Canadian citizens such oversight may promise? How thorough can a background check or vetting be when it has to be conducted against the backdrop of a country in anarchy and under siege from its own president and a sadistic terror group? Keeping our eyes open does not close our hearts. The artificial date of December 31st is one election pledge that can, without cost to credibility, be modified. It is not an abandonment of substance. It is not a retreat. It is simply adding prudence to mercy. Paris is a tragedy that is also a bitter warning that we are in a bloody world, and Canada is not immune from its horrors. Canadian citizens who laud the compassion of their government should have reassurance that their benevolence does not become a weapon used against them by evil and bloody men. If there are any confusions or misunderstandings of how the government is going to manage this program, it is up to the government to make that process clear and publicize all relevant details. We can and should unite caution with our compassion. For The National, I'm Rex Murphy.